Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September 9th, 2020 Norwood Airport Commission meeting. This meeting is being recorded by Norwood Community Media. Is there anyone else out there recording this meeting? All right. First on the agenda, under projects, we have AIP project update. Jeff Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Jeff Adler with Du Bois and King. So I'd like to give a quick update on a few things. Number one, we did have our CIP meeting with FAA and Mass DOT, and one of the issues that's come about over the last several months is some obstructions that FAA has cited that we were aware of as part of the AGIS survey that we did as part of the master plan. So we were aware of those, and now that we can accept AIP funding again, that's a priority project. And so I know the airport's already cut down, Russ working with some tree clearers, cut down the obstructions that were in the 3-5 approach. And we also have obstructions in the 2-8 and 1-7 approaches, and those will be dealt with as part of a construction project for next year. So I know there's been concerns about that due to some nighttime flight restrictions, and so that's going to be an important project next year that we'll be removing those obstructions. So yeah, so that's some good news. We'll also be installing some wildlife fencing as part of that project as well, because we know there's been issues with wildlife issues as well on the airport, and so that's going to be another important project that we'll be doing, queuing up over the winter to bid out in the spring and then do construction next summer. So the other important thing that came about is we did finally get our grant for the environmental assessment for the paved safety areas and the taxiway Charlie relocation. That came in this past month, or the end of the month, and we finally were able to have a kickoff meeting with DEP. We'd been asking them for some time to take a look at the alternatives and offer guidance on moving forward as far as the variance procedure. So we did have a good meeting yesterday with Lisa Rhodes, who's the head person at DEP Boston. And I think the meeting went very well. She understood the timeline. She understood that we want to move forward quickly. So I think we came up with some good steps as far as being able to parallel the DEP variance process as we're going through, local CONCOM permitting and MEPA permitting, state permitting, which I thought was good news. So, yeah, so we've made a couple big strides this month. So that's, I think that's pretty much it for the update, unless anybody has any questions.
Jeff, just
Yeah.
we do have a new environmental planner on board at the town. Al has left, so I'm not sure if you've her name is, I forget Holly's last name, but Holly and Russ can give you the particulars on her contact information. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's appreciated. Like I say, we will be, we wanted to make sure we got DEP on board just because it is going to be another variance to relocate Charlie. And again, I think it was a very positive meeting. We didn't want to get too far down the line without at least having them kind of understand what we're doing and the need for the project. And again, I think it went very well. But no, I appreciate that. So we'll be actually, hopefully next week, we'll be finalizing up a schedule now that we've had the discussion with DEP, and I should be able to get it to the commission and Russ, hopefully by, if not the end of next week, the following week, and then we can track that and progress project through it. So.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? So Jeff, just hang out. There's a couple of parts under new business that have to do with Du Bois and King, and
Sure.
Bring up the first one, the final FAA and Mass DOT payment for the AGIS. And that's pay request number 9, which is final. And we look for a motion to pay that invoice in the amount of $9,770.90, where the town's portion is $488.55.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sheehan,
I'll make that motion, but just a slight correction. The DOT payment is $488.55. We saved a penny, ours is $488.54. So moved.
thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Motion made.
Okay, second.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Motion made and seconded. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Cochran,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. The second piece of new business that has to do with Du Bois and King, it's the post-monitoring of the wetlands that has to do with the taxiway Alpha project. This is for 2 years of service by Du Bois and King to monitor the wetland mitigation sites and provide administration and other general provisions for this contract for 2 years. The dollar amount is $49,975 for this contract. Is there a motion to enter into this contract with Du Bois and King?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Sheehan.
is there a breakdown on the town's portion of this? I was looking for it through this and I didn't see. What's the reimbursement from DOT and FAA?
Mr. Chairman, if I
Jeff.
could, yeah,
Yes.
this is Jeff Adams. So this is 100% reimbursement from FAA, Mike.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moved.
And second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Cochran,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. Thank you. Next up on the agenda are our meeting minutes. August 12th, regular business meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sheehan,
yes, I make a motion to approve the August 12th regular business meeting as presented.
motion made
And second.
and seconded. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Cochran,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. Special business meeting, August 25th, 2020.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sheehan,
I make a motion to approve the special business meeting of August 25th, 2020 as presented.
thank you. Motion has been made.
And second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Cochran,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. Airport managers report. Russ.
Mr. Chairman, unless there are any questions or comments, I'd like to let the written record stand.
So as far, Russ, just the landing fees, so it's every quarter, so the next one will be, at the end of this month, we would get a, payment from the FDO for the landing fees, received.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Sheehan.
motion to approve the airport manager report as presented.
Motion made
Second.
and seconded. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Cochran,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. Next up under old business, I'm not sure if Mina Macarius is online. I know Karis North is, but
I am, Mr. Chair. I'm available by phone.
oh, good afternoon, Mina. So first on the old business agenda is the West Apron, DC3 apron. We're still working towards developing an RFP for those two lots, Russ and Mina.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. I've been working with purchasing on that.
Okay. Because at some point we've got to start realizing some income there. So hopefully it doesn't take too long to get this all squared away. We're going to use the same lease that we've developed pretty much, right, Russ?
Yes, that's correct.
Any other questions or comments on the RFP development?
No.
Nina,
I
is
am-
there, Nina, is there anything you need to add, or are we all set?
Nothing from me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next thing on the agenda on the old business, flight level lots A, B, C, hangar modification requests. Flight level bid on this RFP. They were the only bidder back in May of
Will now be recorded.
2019. Caller 4. Thank you. Under the RFP, there were two items that flight level was looking for release from. One of them was the building height. Stated 28 feet at the front eave of the building is the maximum height. And also they're looking for a relief from the door width, where it's supposed to be 80% of the building width. So the building width is 120 feet. They propose a 96-foot door, but now they are looking to reduce it to 80 feet for a number of reasons, and I'll let them present that. One thing we do know that in the RFP, it gave flexibility to the Norwood Airport Commission on that door width, even though it said 80% of the front width. It did say, or unless authorized by the Norwood Airport Commission. So with that said, is anyone from flight level here to present any more information before we make a decision on those two waiver requests of the RFP?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Nick Burlingham for Flight Level Aviation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Following our last meeting on this, we went back to do some work, which included an analysis of the other buildings on the airport, the size of the doors and the heights of those buildings. And we summarized that work in a letter that we submitted to the Airport Commission on September 4th. And generally speaking, the hangar door departure that we're requesting is basically right in line with the average door that the other buildings on the airport have. Secondly, we did an analysis of the line of sight from the control tower to the airfield, and determined that with respect to the height departure that we're seeking to 35 feet, that only a 30-foot amount of the parking apron would be obscured by that taller structure. And then we also laid out a number of other reasons for our request for the departure for the narrower door, mostly centered on heating efficiency, use of resources, and the efficiencies that would be gained by not releasing as much heat come wintertime. Every time we open the doors to let out a small aircraft, a 96-foot door would dump all of the heat from the hangar. So, and again, we recognize that the bid was submitted with a larger door. We understand that if the commission chooses not to accept our request for the departure to the smaller door, that it will be our obligation to build it with a bigger door, and we fully embrace that. However, we think it makes better sense to have the smaller door. And for the reasons that we laid out in our letter of September 4th, we respectfully request that the commission grant that request. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Chairman, we got you on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Burlingham. So any thoughts? Do you want to take these one at a time, or Russ, do you have anything to add to this?
The only thing I would add is the RFP seems to give some latitude to the airport commission on the door width. And I think some of the arguments made by flight level on reducing the width are viable.
So in front of us, we do have some support from Karis North. Thank you to help us in our decision. Hopefully you see that. Two other commissioner members. Yeah. First up, what we have is the discussion, the waiver, Section 5, hangar construction of the RFP, Section N. The front eave of the proposed structure shall be no higher than 28 feet above the pavement surface. So flight level is asked to waive that. Is there any thought on the other two commissioners on how to proceed with that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Sheehan.
Yeah, and thank you, Karis, for supplying us with your legal opinion. And I think Karis was clear that while we have some discretion on 5W, we don't have any discretion on 5N. And so based on the legal counsel, if I read Karis's summation correctly, that we cannot do that. And if I'm correct, Karis, then I will not be moving forward to grant any variance for 5N because legal says we can't do it. And
So-
Karis, are you correct in summarizing your opinion?
Yes, Mr. Sheehan. I do not believe that you have the authority to vary the requirements of the RFP with respect to the structure height based on the language of the RFP itself. So, and really good procurement practice as well.
Thank you.
That is obviously different with respect to the hangar door width, where you clearly have the ability to vary based on the language of the RFP.
Thank you, Kara. So, Mr. Sheehan, is that a motion not to grant that that waiver of Section 5, subsection N?
Yeah, and I'll just hold it in case John wants to weigh in on it, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please. Thank you. Mr. Cochran, any thoughts?
The only thought I had on it was what we had discussed previously. But my concern was with the FAA regarding site of the ramp. But if we don't have the authorization to change that, then or to allow for a variance from that, it's a moot point. So I agree with Mr. Sheehan that at this point I would not support that portion of flight level's request.
Thank
So
you,
I'll move my motion forward, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Sheehan,
Yeah, and just to be clear, the motion is to deny the request for flight level and for a variance in Section 5, paragraph N, hangar construction. Yes.
For the hanger
Sheehan.
height. The height of the hanger only, not the door.
Correct.
And second the motion.
Motion made and second. Mr. Sheehan voted yes. Mr. Corcoran?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Ryan votes yes. There was another waiver request, and this would be section 5, under hangar construction, paragraph W, where it stated aircraft hangar door width shall be no less than 80% of the building frontage width unless authorized by the NAC. The building frontage is 120 feet. The 80% would be 96 feet. They're requesting an 80-foot door. And we do have the flexibility, Karis, to waive that per the RFP.
You do have the ability to modify that in the exercise of your good discretion, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Sheehan.
based on the advice of legal counsel, I move to approve section 5 hangar construction W, allowing flight level for an 80-foot door rather than a 96. That's my motion.
Motion made.
Motion second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Sheehan.
Yes.
Mr. Corcoran.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is, Russ, we have the battery-powered zero-turn mower with solar canopy and attachments. We're looking to approve this invoice for $25,854.
Mr. Sheehan, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. Just need a motion to approve the invoice. Have the chairman sign the Mass DOT standard contract and grant assurances once those are received, as well as the Mass DOT payment request. There'll be one. It'll be payment in full on this. Again, $25,854. That's 100% Mass DOT financed.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion to approve this in payment of this invoice?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of questions
Yes, Mr. Sheehan.
for the airport manager. Russ, so this being solar powered, will the entire machinery be outside? Or will there be batteries that'll be charged outside and then inserted into the machinery?
It's actually battery powered and solar canopy. There were several attachments that came with the machine as well at the request of the assistant manager. There was a kind of a blower to blow fog off the taxiways if he's working in a grassy sod area adjacent to the runways or taxiways. And there was a beacon as well, so that the air traffic control tower could see him while he was out there. But again, this is a battery powered with a solar canopy, just to give him a little bit of shade while he's out there.
Okay, so the batteries we charge inside, he puts them in the machine. While he's running it, if it's a sunny day, he'll be recharging the batteries?
Unfortunately, I couldn't tell you that for sure. I don't know the answer to that. I would suspect no.
Okay. Oh, so I'm reading this wrong. It's just it's not a solar power canopy. It's a canopy for rain and sunshine. It's not charging. It's going to be a battery operated. Okay. All right. Thank you. Motion to approve.
Motion made
And second.
and second. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Corcoran,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. Next up, under new business, we have Southern Airways, who's been providing service to Nantucket and other places out of Norwood Airport. And we have a couple of requests, and we have representatives of Southern Airways here to make their presentation. Please welcome first, and please state your name, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Pleasure to be here today virtually. Joining me is my colleague, Ryan Dock, who is similarly dressed and in the same state as Pennsylvania right now as I am. Ryan is our Director of Stations, and he oversees all of our airport operations on the U.S. mainland. Despite COVID's devastating impact in 2020, Southern Airways remains strong, both here in New England and all the way west to Honolulu. We have weathered the storm by trying to find opportunities in this very difficult airline environment. And I'm happy to report that one of our true success stories for this year has been our last minute foray into New England. As all of you on the committee know, we tipped our toe into the water last summer with a modest schedule, 5 days a week. And when the rest of the world started to shut down, we decided that we would try to get folks to stay close to home and fly to Nantucket. And I'm happy to report our overall Nantucket and New England operation for 2020 was up 50% over last year, which is quite an achievement in this environment. And the star of the show was Norwood to Nantucket, which was up over 70%. We have a new product at our company where we are selling bulk tickets, kind of the old coupon book idea updated to the digital world. Several of our customers have purchased large blocks of tickets and have requested that we pursue a year-round operation to Nantucket. After doing an analysis, it appears that we have sufficient business to support that. However, our partners at Flight Level who handle our flights here in Norwood have expressed some concerns about the airport requirements on de-icing. And the first question on our agenda today is to get some clarification as to what those parameters are and begin by telling you the scope of what our de-icing operation typically looks like on a flight. And I will hand that over to my partner, Ryan, to address for you all.
Thank you. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. All right, so with the aircraft, the Cessna Caravan and de-icing it, the plan, as I understand it, would be that the aircraft would stay overnight in Norwood and depart first thing in the morning. With that being the case, as long as the aircraft is fueled at night before it's hangared, it should be able to be pulled right out of the hangar, immediately taken over to where the passengers are and depart from there. You know, that's more of called a heated hangar de-ice. You know, that way any kind of contamination that was on the aircraft when it arrived the night before would melt off during the evening. If there was a case where not all of the contamination came off, or if we decided to add flights during the day and the aircraft landed with contamination that needed to be removed, we do have a de-ice unit that we can take up there. It runs off of type 2 fluid. Normally for the Cessna Caravan, an aircraft that size, you're looking at about 15 gallons of fluid that would have to be sprayed onto the aircraft. So with that, there should be a designated area where that fluid could then be where it's not, you know, getting on any other aircraft or someone's walkway. So we'd be looking at the potential of roughly 10 to 15 gallons being put onto the ground or onto the ramp area. Most airports have a designated spot where they take the aircraft to be de-iced. Some of them have an actual de-ice pad where there's grates in there and the fluid then drains there. Others just have a parking area out of the range where they go and have it sprayed. For the most part, it would be very little fluid.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Russ, you have some additional information regarding this?
Mr. Chairman, I actually had a very good conversation with Mark Sestari, I believe it was last week. Following this, I actually did some research, further research on the matter and with respect to Norwood Airport. And to review, because of its industrial classification, the airport is required by the EPA to have a multi-sector general permit for stormwater discharges and to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan on file, which would mitigate unsavory discharges into the water system and the wetlands, and finally the receiving waters of the Neponset River. The stormwater plan is, among other things, it's a guiding document which restricts what we as a facility can discharge into our stormwater system. In 2015, I actually had reached out to the principal of Smart Associates, which was the company that was our consultant that assisted us in helping to craft our stormwater plan, which we currently operate under, again, with the multi-sector permit. Among other things, the principal of the airport consulting firm enlightened me on the compliance requirements of our tenant businesses under our stormwater pollution prevention plan, and he listed de-icing operations as an industrial activity which, even if it's done indoors so as not to expose the de-icing chemicals to the stormwater, would still require a prospective business to apply through EPA for what they call a conditional exclusion for no exposure. And what complicates this is we obviously don't have that currently with Southern Airways. What complicates it is that Southern Airways is not even a tenant business technically in its as a commercial permit holder on the airport. It's actually operating as a transient charter operator. So it doesn't have a commercial permit issued by the Norwood Airport Commission, or, and this is kind of aligned with the commercial permit requirement, insurance requirements with a policy listing the town of Norwood and the Norwood Airport Commission as additionally insured. I don't want to dampen the enthusiasm for this business, because I think what they, from a business perspective, what they're doing is very exciting for the market here at Norwood Airport. But I would caution the commission on without some deliberation allowing them to, or any tenant business on the airport, whether they have a commercial permit or not, to de-ice on the airport without getting this EPA conditional exclusion for no exposure. That I think is kind of, everything is predicated on that right now, so.
Okay, I have a question, Mr. Manager. Do you have any sense from EPA what the turnaround time on such a request would be? The other items that you mentioned are certainly within our purview to address in terms of registering with the airport, insurance, et cetera. But what do we think realistically might the turnaround time be?
Well, unfortunately, you're asking a municipal employee to gauge what the federal government is capable of doing in a turnaround. If I had that crystal ball in front of me, I would have probably been using it for years now. I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that question, unfortunately.
Well, one of the challenges is we were not planning to operate year-round for certain, because we had a lot of trepidation about the market response. And we really had to give this until Labor Day to see what the vital signs look like for September and beyond. And fortunately or unfortunately at this point, they look very strong. Our September is shaping to look better than August, which is rather shocking. But, you know, and I would assume in these parts, Brian, I'll defer to you on this, we might have to de-ice as early as late October.
So normally how I do it is I usually have our northernmost cities set up for September 15th. That was always Jamestown, New York, and Bradford, Pennsylvania, due to heavy frost if an aircraft set out overnight. The rest of the company goes live with de-icing on October 15th. Now, if you're using a hangar, then it's very rare that you would de-ice in October. That's more for the aircraft that sits out and has frost on it. I'm not too familiar with a Massachusetts winter. Being from the Buffalo area, nothing will surprise me. But if we're using a hangar and we're only doing a morning departure, there wouldn't be as much of a demand to actually spray an aircraft with fluid. It's those flights that would come in during the afternoon. And also, if we set it up only for that morning departure and you did have that contamination on there, then of course the aircraft would be delayed until it was all removed the next day in the hangar. But so to answer your question, if the aircraft stays out overnight in Norwood, then there would be de-icing necessary, perhaps starting at October 15th or first frost.
Right, but
If it's hangared, then it'll be later.
Gotcha. And my second question, again, for Manager Russ, if our aircraft operation is handled by flight level, could they secure the permit on their behalf, since they're already registered and insured and on the property, and just continue to view us as an itinerant operation? We only contemplate one flight, and at this point, it doesn't look like that would be a daily operation. It would probably be 4 days a week.
I would have to actually think about that, Mr. Chairman. It's possible.
These are great questions, and I think it's not going to be solved in this meeting, but I think it makes sense for Russ and Southern Airways to get together with flight level and kind of hammer this out, what the permit requirement is, the timeline for it, how it could happen, the insurance requirements, reach out to council if necessary. Russ, does that make sense?
Yes, and I would add, Mr. Chairman, just to kind of try to illuminate this without bringing it to a further point of abstraction here. Flight level has filed a notice of intent to basically fall under the stormwater plan, the airport authority's stormwater plan. I'm not sure how that would sync up with them going out and then filing a conditional exclusion for no exposure. I'd have to actually look into that, but it may require a little bit more research with the help of either our aviation attorneys or town council.
Speaking for myself, this was such a great thing when Southern Airways came here last year, and we're excited that its business is great, and we look forward to hopefully working this out. I don't know if anyone from the commission wants to make a motion to have Russ work with Southern Airways and flight level and reach out to council if necessary to try to move this along.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sheehan.
Yeah, I'm also very excited with, I got a mad dog here, with the success of Southern Airlines. What I wanted to just throw out there to Russ, if it's a possibility, that we find an area where we could put a 100 or 150 gallon catch basin that doesn't go anywhere. And when that reaches 75% capacity, Southern Airway would come in and have someone pump it all out, such as a Good Harbor organization that does that. That way it stays contained in the catch basin and doesn't go into the stormwater drain system at all. You know, I don't know if that's possible, but I think it's an option that might work, especially if they're only planning on doing it very infrequently. That might last a couple of weeks, and then they could have a company come in, pump it out. And I think that's something we should look at if that's a possibility, because I think we are tied stringently towards the Wetlands Protection Act. And I think when you get into that, you open up more can of worms than you really want, not only with the EPA, but with also the DEP and also the local Conservation Commission. So I just throw that out there as an idea, something to look at. We are very happy with the success, and you had said that that was your goal, and you've achieved your goal, and it almost mirrors, I remember your presentation where you showed where you started in other areas and where you ended up, and you did that here. And it's nice when someone comes forward and says with a plan, and they execute that plan. And I'm looking for more great things from Southern Airways. So yeah, I'll make that motion that the manager work with Southern Airway and see if we can find some alternatives. And also where flight level is the FBO they're using and leasing space for them, they should perhaps be involved in that conversation. And that's my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Motion has been made.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say a couple things. One,
Sure.
I know that on the that we have discussed wash rack and de-icing locations on the airport master plan for the future. And I was wondering, maybe like when you have a fueling incident, a fueling operation that's coming in, they're using a truck to truck temporarily until they can get their fully compliant system online. They're allowed to have, you can apply to have a variance for temporary containment. And I believe, and this is from memory, I think it's around 110 to 115% of the vehicle that they're storing the fuel in. So let's say they used a 1,000-gallon de-icing vehicle. They would have to have 1,100 gallons, or that, you know, could go plus or minus 10%. If we could do that and have the collection, and like Mike said, among Mr. Sheehan, if we could collect that type 2 fluid and have it pumped regularly, that might be an option. And instead of waiting until if there's some sort of a temporary process that we can do with the EPA. And obviously, I support that motion to have Russ look into this.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. And on the motion, I agree, because, you know, having that tank that would, you know, collect this glycol or whatever they use for de-icing and have it pumped out, 150 gallons sounds like a big structure. It's really not a very big structure. So it's definitely an option. And I thank Mr. Sheehan and Mr. Cochran for their input. So we have a motion that has been seconded. So Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Cochran?
Yes.
And Mr. Ryan votes yes. Next up, regarding Southern Airways, they have a discussion about some overnight parking. So the floor is yours again, Mark.
Thank you. One note on the recovery system. Ironically, Ryan and I were in Bradford, Pennsylvania today, which is his home, and they have that identical system there already constructed. So I'm sure the manager would be able to assist us in terms of what is required in terms of removing the fluid, et cetera. So we operate with that system in one of our other cities. Regarding the parking request, again, wanting to be a good neighbor, living in a Massachusetts town myself that bans overnight parking in public lots and on the streets. certain times of the year. I am knowledgeable of some of the local ordinances in order to facilitate snow removal. I think looking at our traffic pattern, I'm estimating that the maximum number of cars that we bring to the lot at any time, because of our customers usually traveling in groups and the duration of their stay, is usually no more than 10. And my back of the envelope idea would be to ask the commission to designate a designated area of 10 spaces, which could be cordoned off as Southern Airways parking. And we would advise our customers prior to their departure that the lot's going to be plowed around them, and upon return, they would be responsible for clearing their own vehicle and their parking space. So I guess our request is, would the commission consider such an arrangement, and if so, under what conditions and requirements for us?
Thank you. Russ, do you have any thoughts about the parking?
Just a few thoughts, Mr. Chairman. I know Ryan mentioned that he's from Buffalo, and I can tell you from being here 25 years, Ryan, in 3 of the most historic winters on record, that we get a lot of snow here. My first winter, we had 125 inches. That was my baptism by fire. So there will be a lot of, hypothetically, there will be a lot of snow this winter. That's kind of my mindset when I go into a winter. The main lot is a perennial issue in the winter months because of the Avis car. The Avis operator. The commission back in 2013 authorized 6 spaces. That generally works well, but at times, as recently as a year ago, when I included in your meeting packets pretty long list of documents showing that they were literally dropping off vehicles, and vehicles just don't get picked up regularly. It's understandable, but it's a relatively small lot. I think it was 100 spaces when we designed the lot. It supports a lot of businesses both on airport and on access roads, so that would be a concern. And depending on how the winter goes and what the snowfall totals are, it can become, as the winter moves along, a little bit more challenging to clear the lot. So we just keep all of that in mind. But again, the commission did. There has been a precedent. Back in 2013, the commission voted to give Avis 6 additional parking spaces on top of the 8 spaces that Flight Level has provided to them along the basically between the Flight Level passenger terminal and Tassos. So there were the 8 there plus the 6 in the main lot for Avis. So that has there has been a precedent on that.
Russ, do we charge for those spaces?
We don't.
Was there discussion at one point to do that?
There was probably offline discussions about that. I don't recall the commission ever talking about that. They may have. It would be hard to, it's like everything else. It's just to administer those costs, to go out in the lot, to build these people. It requires man hours.
No, but the cost would be just a monthly fee, that's all.
Yeah, I mean,
Charged
this is, right. And this is why, at some of the bigger airports, they actually have a parking lot attendant who does this kind of thing.
Mr. Sheehan, Mr. Parker?
I'll jump in if I can for a second and just say one of the cornerstones of our brand at Norwood and our success in pulling people away from Logan Airport is the free parking. And I would ask the commission to consider that in terms of its impact on our ability to get people to change their current habits.
Mr. Commissioner.
Yes, Mr. Cochran.
Yes, so they're a tenant of Flight Level Norwood. Can we have Flight Level Norwood manage that parking and maybe work with the airport manager? So if they need to move their cars or whatever, I know that from my dealings with other airports that I've worked at around the country, it's kind of treated, the FBO is kind of treated as the executive airport, if you will. And when the passenger comes in, they're shuffled through the gate, load their bags in the car, and the FBO parks their car for them. And they would have the keys, and they would be able to move the keys and shuffle the cars around for Flight Level as their tenant.
Any thoughts on that, Mark?
Again, I think our secret sauce at Norwood is simplicity. And while I love the idea of that level of concierge service, I like even better the fact that people just park their car, they walk 3 minutes and they're on a plane.
So when they do, before they enter the plane, they do notify Flight Level or someone that could keep a log of whose car is who in the
Yeah.
lot, right?
Yep.
When they're returning.
We could
Yeah,
even
Mr. Chair.
collect that at the point of reservation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Mike Prosick at Flight Level. At this time, we do not collect any keys for Southern's cars. They all park in the parking lot.
Right, but this is a reservation, reserving whatever number, up to 10 spaces for Southern Airways only is the request.
Now, is this discussion being 10 spots within the lot or 10 spots within the secure area? Because I don't think we have the facility inside the gate area to accommodate 10 more vehicles outside of our base customers as well.
Yeah, I believe it was the parking lot out front.
Yes, the outside the fence lot, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, Russ, if the question is if it needs to be moved at a certain pot for you guys to plow, I don't think it's a big deal if we do collect the keys, and as long as we have their license plates and we can move the vehicles for you during any time that you guys need to plow.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would, these snow removal operations, and often they're in the wee hours of the night. I know Flight Level is out there alongside the airport authority. We've got our contractor out on the runways and taxiways, and we're out there as well. And I know Flight Level has his personnel committed to the cleanup of its aprons. So I know that they're out there, regardless of the circumstances. So it makes it a little bit easier to get that level of coordination from the FBO if we go this route.
Well, once again, I think we got to look at this a little bit more. I mean, if you congregate, I mean, I understand the difficulty during a snowstorm. There's random cars, in different areas. You got to weave in and out. But if you congregate cars, and I mean, quite frankly, how many cars will be congregated at a time? I know the request is for 10, but wouldn't be more than that. But realistically, what do you think is going to be there? I don't know, 4 or 5 at a time congregated. I think it's a lot easier to plow around that than random cars parked there. So I think, Russ, it's something you might want to take a long look at and get back to the commission with a recommendation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Sheehan?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this. Because it's tandem parking spots, so we're talking about 10, we're really talking about 5. And I think we should try to make it work, and you might be able to make it work at the front as you come in, where the spots are now, by will, vertical. We make them horizontal and tie it off. My only issue with this is for people that would be parking will be clearing off their vehicles. No Southern Airways or Flight Level would have to be responsible, because what happens is they throw the snow just like you see in the city, back into the street. In this case, they'll be throwing the snow back into the parking lot. So it's great to have the passengers do it, but when they clean their car off and shovel themselves out, then we have to go ahead and send back someone to clean that up. So like Russ, as part of your discussion and your plan, I think there has to be a snow removal plan, not one that the passengers is just responsible. Because someone coming from a long flight or even a short flight wants to get home, they're not worrying about where the snow's going. So just to comment on that, but I think we should try to make this happen if it's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. So is there a motion? That would be a motion then, Mr. Sheehan?
Yes, that's my motion, to have the airport manager work with Southern and with the FPO and possibly Andy Murphy there might be able to be helpful in regards to a layout, Mr. Chairman.
So a motion has been made.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Corcoran,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your consideration. Great to see everyone, and hopefully we can put together a plan here that it works for everyone. Appreciate your time.
Agreed. Thank you.
Have a good day.
So we do have some correspondence. Is there any discussion on that, or?
Motion to place the correspondence on file.
I second the motion.
Did we lose the chairman? That means I'm in charge, John. You with us, Mark?
I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right,
I'm here. I'm back.
all right.
Rose,
Call the roll.
was there a motion for the correspondence? Everything froze here.
To place it on file, and John seconded it.
Oh, thank you. Motion made and seconded. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Corcoran,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. With that said, we would like to go in executive session for a couple of items. Executive meeting minutes of August 12th, plus for purpose 3, for executive session, discuss strategy with respect to litigation. If an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Norwood Airport Commission. 1, Boston Executive Helicopter versus Town of Norwood. 2, Boston Executive Helicopters versus Norwood Airport Commission, the Town of Norwood. And when this executive session is over, we will not go back into public session, but we will adjourn both the executive and public session in that meeting. Is there a motion to that?
So moved.
Motion made
Second.
and seconded. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Corcoran,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan votes yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.